We'll start with you. First of all, who are you?
My name is Kirk Glerum. Oh, I'm looking at the
All
camera. My name is Kirk Glerum. I work on the Watson team.
right. And who are you?
My name is Mike Hollinshead, and I work on the Watson service team as well. And I'm our tester, quality assurance driver.
Okay, so what is Watson?
Well, the Watson service is the service that collects error reporting reports that are sent out via our various clients. And we then take that data and push it to the appropriate developers to follow up on those issues.
Okay, so how do developers go about actually using Watson?
When we first started with Watson, you had to go change the application itself so that when it crashed, you would register a unhandled exception filter to catch the crash and fire up Watson and send the report off to Microsoft. This was the original design back in Office XP. But by the time we got it working, we figured out this was actually pretty cool, and the Windows folk could shoehorn the same technology into Windows itself. So with Windows XP, every single application that crashed would pop up a little dialog, which I'm sure you've all seen, offering you the chance to report it up to Microsoft. So people who wrote applications and had no idea that we even existed, all of a sudden were getting their crashes reported back to Microsoft on their customers' behalf without their even being aware of it. So instead of having data from a couple dozen or a couple hundred Microsoft applications, we have data from a couple million applications all around the world. And that segued into the big website of winqual.microsoft.com, Windows Quality, whereby third-party developers can log in, say what's the name of their application, prove it's theirs through some mysterious process, and then get the data showing what their top crashes are, get the dumps showing the state of the world when they crashed, etc., and so on.
So is there some big expensive cost to using the WinQuell website and getting all these
I
data?
think there's a little expensive cost. Like, you have to prove that you are who you say you are, but frankly I've forgotten how they do that, whether it's through certs, VeriSign stuff, some hoodoo dance, but the right stuff happens.
All right. So what's changed? What's new in Windows Vista?
It used to be that we were about crashes and only crashes. You would crash, you would get a snapshot of memory at the time of the crash, and that's what would get pumped on up to Microsoft. Now we have a lot more stuff wired in where other types of glitches and snafus get caught or predicted and sent up as well. A cool one that's being worked on is for leak detection. So you've got an application that's running and it's using a whole lot of memory, and due to some wonky heuristics, they think that it might be leaking memory. So instead of saying, it crashed, send it up. Well, it seems like it's leaking. Take a bunch of other types of data and send that up with Watson. We'll build a bunch of charts, a bunch of curves, make predictions. Maybe it wouldn't tell you there's a problem, but it would give you a strong indication of where to look, that sort of thing.
So what about privacy? What kind of information actually goes up on these crash dumps? Is it, user information or?
Well, everybody has seen the crash dialog before. I presume everybody watching this has seen that come up once or twice. If you click the send button, well, there's a about information with a pointer to our privacy page, so it's all spelled out there. The simplest explanation is that the mini dump contains the memory your application was using at the time of the crash, but not all of the memory. The default is all of the stacks of all of the threads and the globals of the crashing application and the module it crashed in, which I proclaim does not contain personally identifiable information. But in practice, it's impossible to know for sure. For all I know, some random application out there in the world happens to have your Visa card number sitting on the stack when they crashed, in which case it would certainly be in that range of memory that we sucked up. But I don't know what's in that range of memory because I don't know what their stack looks like, so it's probably not there, and if it is there, I don't know how to look for it. So it's a funny one in the world of privacy. The second level is that the developer looks at the crash, tries to figure out what's going on, and realizes that they need more data because the initial dump does not contain all the memory used by the process. So he goes back and requests a fresh set of uploads, but he asks for a full dump of memory instead of the usual mini dump. If you've seen one of those, which are much rarer, you click the send button, it sends off to Microsoft, and then another dialog pops up on your screen, the user screen. And it says, Microsoft or somebody needs more information. Would you mind sending this large snapshot of memory, blah, blah, blah. Like I say, those are very rare, so people watching this may not even have seen that come up. Anyway, it is a second informed consent telling people that we want more stuff, and this is the real stuff. This is all allocated memory by your application. So it is your documents, it is your spreadsheet, it's everything in there. But we put up the second dialog, it defaults to cancel, etc., and we keep it all in a locked warehouse deep in a salt cavern beneath Montana with armed guards surrounding it.
Can you even say Montana? Is that
I
too much information? Might have to cut that.
Utah.
So how does this all work? I mean, why do developers not have to instrument their code with all sorts of things?
Well, you can instrument your code. We like instrumentation. We have a lot of new instrumentation going into Office 12, which is not Windows Vista, but it's nonetheless a big Watson client, a big Watson component. And we do instrument for more. But I don't know that that's the same as what Windows developers around the world are doing. I don't know. It's not as though the Vista team has dreamed up a whole bunch of APIs for them to write to. Have they?
I'm not sure. That's probably a question for the Vista team.
Yeah, you'll have to beat them up for that.
Okay.
I think one of the interesting things for us, though, is that the way that with this data we've changed our engineering process. I think in the past you would have an application and you ship that application and then you work on service packs afterwards because of after the fact you find out about issues. One of the cool things about the Watson service and what that's done is it's given us the ability to collect crash information from our betas and from our internal usage of the applications and fix problems before they go out and hit the real world customers. So it's driving that follow-up on issues before the product hits the main street. That's one of the big benefits for the service as well.
Very true.
Great. So my application crashes.
Yep.
All this information goes up to the WinQual site or is stored somewhere, and then I can get at it through the WinQual site.
Correct.
What is the actual, what do I get back? Is it a bunch of text files? Is it...
The main thing you'll get back to start with is a crash curve where you would say, my app, flimflam.exe, version 1.3.4.6, had 6,000 unique crashes, and the top one got hit 1,200 times yesterday, and the next one got hit 1,100 times yesterday, etc. So you've got a bunch of buckets for your application and version. And our usual model is, well, you fix the first one, big one first. So you take the bucket that got hit the most, and you say, all right, it got hit 1,200 times yesterday, maybe 10,000 times in total. But you don't want 10,000 dumps, because it's probably the same thing 10,000 times in a row. So you get 10 dumps, 10 mini dumps, a snapshot of memory from 10 people who reported that particular crash. And at the simplest level, you just take those dumps and you fire it up under Visual Studio, and up comes your application as an autopsy, frozen in time at the exact second that it died. It's just like debugging under Visual Studio anyway, except you can't single step because there's not really a process running. But you've got the stack, you've got your globals, you've got, assuming that Visual Studio that you gave Visual Studio a pointer to your exe and the PDBs and all of that stuff, which you stored away before you shipped the product. Don't forget to do that. Then you'll be able to see exactly what the state of your app was at the point it crashed. So you can look at it and then slap your forehead and say, oh man, I forgot to check for null. Cool. That's the hope. And then you can fix that bug and ship a new version, and then you can go look at the top crashes of flimflam.exe version 1.3.9.8, and that one ought to be gone.
So is there anything developers can do to go beyond just what's crashing? I mean, are these the APIs we're talking about with maybe the Windows Vista? Or is there some stuff built in already that...
The next biggest one beyond crashes are hangs. We started out with Watson tracking both, but we paid more attention to the crashes, frankly, because they're easier to fix. It turns out that fixing crashes is much more straightforward because you find simple things like, gee, I forgot to check for null. But fixing hangs is a heck of a lot harder. So we fixed all the crashes, so to speak, and then attacked the hangs the second time around. There's a lot of new stuff in Vista for properly bucketing hangs. They used to come up to Watson in a very rough fashion, so they were all thrown into one pot, one bucket. Much more difficult to sort through. But Vista guys have done a lot of work on that. So we should have much better, much richer data this time around for cataloging and investigating your hangs. And as I'm sure everyone's aware, hangs are worse than crashes, frankly. Because with a crash, boom, you're dead, you swear, you punch the button, you start over again. But with a hang, you end up dinking around with it for 30 seconds until you finally give up and click the stupid X. So for user pain, for user hassle, they are worse. And therefore, having better data for being able to find them and fix them is a much bigger win for the customer.
Okay. So what do you actually do on the
What do I do?
Watson team? Yes.
I am a data cowboy. I take all those millions of hits every day, and we pump them through SQL, and we slice them and dice them and parse them, and we figure out what came in yesterday. So my job is to take all of the data that pours into our servers and to turn it into a form that people can use to fix their bugs. That's my whole goal, is to gather the data necessary for people to fix their bugs.
So how much data are we talking about here?
That's highly proprietary. I couldn't possibly tell you.
Okay, fair enough.
But we did buy some spanking new SQL boxes with 16 procs and I think 8 gig of RAM, and that was a big help.
So how about yourself? What do you actually do on the team?
All right. Well, I ensure that our servers are up and running most of the time, and organize and verify Kirk's latest features that we deploy out live, and also manage those deployments, as well as work with all our various product teams and make sure that their feature requests are coming in and we're addressing those, and we schedule them and make sure they go out in a timely fashion. So there's some dancing that we do with our clients to make sure that on the service side we enable features in a timely fashion so they can then leverage those in their ship process.
Okay. So is there anything you guys would like to tell developers about making their apps more reliable, or?
What would I like to tell developers?
I don't know. One thing for people in general, I guess, is always click send. I mean, that data is invaluable to folks. So, whenever you are working on Windows or any of your apps and you see that crash dialog, always press send, because people are looking at those reports, they're following up on that data, and it helps us to make the product better.
So I'm sure one of the reasons not to click send is you're worried about what you're sending. Is there some way to look at that data before you send it off?
There is, so Kirk kind of talked about what we believe is not as data kind of collected by default, the mini dump and whatnot, and we say proclaim that that does not contain any personally identifiable information. Now, if you continue on and you do have some of the more interesting data, we pop up a dialog that kind of describes what we're collecting, and then also in one of our links in the various clients, we have a page that is linked to called the data collection policy, which will describe all of that. So while as you probably can't crack the actual files that we're sending up, we try to describe what in general that kind of information is. Okay. If you want to expand on that.
I think that's a pretty good explanation. If it does bother you personally, if you really just feel the slightest bit bad about it, don't click the send button. Your peers elsewhere around the world probably will, and probably you're hitting the same crash as they are, so it'll probably get fixed anyway. But people click the send button. We get plenty of hits every day, don't you worry.
Great. Well,
cool.
Thank you guys very much.
Best of luck.